Why do you think you never got married?
I think that the reason I didn't get married was because I would have to compromise.
The world woke up to heartbreaking news. Diane Keaton, one of Hollywood's most beloved and timeless actresses, has passed away peacefully at the age of 79. For millions, her passing wasn't just the loss of an icon. It was the closing of a golden chapter in American cinema. Known for her unmatched charm, her effortless humor, and her bold individuality, Keaton wasn't just a movie star. She was a mirror of authenticity in an industry built on illusion. From the quirky, free-spirited Annie Hall to her powerful roles in The Godfather, Diane Keaton redefined what it meant to be a leading lady. She showed that strength and vulnerability could coexist, that beauty didn't need to be polished, and that a woman could succeed entirely on her own terms. But behind the radiant smile and vintage hats was a woman who often hid her deepest emotions behind laughter. Friends and family describe her final years as peaceful, filled with reflection, love, and gratitude. Yet those closest to her knew that Diane carried unspoken pain, private struggles, and a lifetime of emotional battles that fame could never heal. As the world celebrates her extraordinary legacy, questions remain about the woman behind the roles, her heartbreaks, her loneliness, and her final moments of peace. Today, we remember Diane Keaton, not just as a star, but as a woman who lived fearlessly, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that will forever bring tears to those who knew her, and those who only knew her from the screen. From Los Angeles, who dreamed of something bigger than the life she knew. Born on January 5, 1946, she grew up in a modest household where imagination was encouraged. Her mother, Dorothy, was a homemaker and amateur photographer who taught Diane to see beauty in the ordinary. Her father, Jack, was a real estate broker, practical, disciplined, and the complete opposite of his daughter's free spirit. From an early age, Diane had a fascination with performance. She adored musicals, idolized Katharine Hepburn, and imagined herself on stage. After high school, she moved to New York City to study acting at the neighborhood playhouse, a bold move that set the tone for the rest of her life. The city was rough and unwelcoming at first, but Diane thrived on its energy. She wasn't the conventional beauty that casting agents sought, but she had something far more valuable: presence. Her first big break came in 1968 when she was cast in the Broadway musical Hair. Known for its rebellious spirit and controversial themes, the play mirrored Diane's own nonconformist personality. It was there that a young neurotic comedian named Woody Allen noticed her, and what followed would change both of their lives forever. Diane joined the cast of Allen's play, Play It Again, Sam, and soon, their professional relationship blossomed into a romantic one. When Allen cast her as the lead in his 1977 masterpiece Annie Hall, he wasn't just giving her a role, he was giving her immortality. Diane's portrayal of the offbeat, vulnerable Annie wasn't acting, it was her. The film became a cultural phenomenon, redefining romance in cinema and earning Keaton an Academy Award for Best Actress. With her loose ties, baggy trousers, and natural charm, she became a fashion icon overnight, a woman unafraid to be herself in a world obsessed with perfection. But as fame wrapped itself around her, Diane began to see the darker side of Hollywood. Beneath the applause was a growing sense of isolation. She once admitted in an interview, "Fame doesn't fill you up, it empties you out." Behind her radiant smile was a woman grappling with self-doubt, love lost, and an endless search for meaning. Her relationship with Woody Allen eventually ended, though their creative bond endured. Later, she would fall deeply in love with two more Hollywood heavyweights, Warren Beatty and Al Pacino. Each romance was passionate, but none lasted. In her memoir, Diane later confessed that her fear of commitment often drove people away. "I was too independent," she wrote. "I loved the idea of love, but I didn't know how to stay in it." Despite her heartbreaks, Diane refused to let her personal life define her. Instead, she poured her soul into her craft, delivering unforgettable performances in Manhattan, Reds, Something's Gotta Give, and Marvin's Room. She became a symbol of resilience. showing that a woman could age gracefully in Hollywood without losing her sparkle. By her 50s, Diane made a life-altering decision. She adopted 2 children, Dexter and Duke. Motherhood changed her in ways that fame never could. Her friends say it grounded her, softened her, and gave her a purpose beyond the camera. She became fiercely protective of her privacy, often retreating to her home filled with vintage photographs, art, and memories of a life well lived. Yet even in her serenity, Diane remained reflective. In one of her last interviews, she said quietly, "I've had love, I've had loneliness, and I've had laughter. That's enough." It was a statement that captured the essence of who Diane Keaton truly was. A woman who danced to her own rhythm, who loved deeply but privately, and who taught the world that authenticity is the most beautiful thing a person can wear. As Diane Keaton's star rose higher, Hollywood could not get enough of her. By the late 1970s, she was one of the most sought-after actresses in the world, a woman who seemed to float between comedy and drama with effortless grace. Her performance in Annie Hall had turned her into a symbol of authenticity, and suddenly every studio wanted a piece of her charm. But what audiences didn't see behind the award shows and magazine covers was the immense loneliness that came with being Diane Keaton. In public, she was radiant, the witty, eccentric woman who never took herself too seriously. She wore her signature hats, spoke her mind, and laughed at the absurdities of fame. But in private, Diane often confessed that she battled anxiety and self-doubt. Friends recalled how she would sometimes disappear from social events for months, retreating into her quiet home to find balance. She loved the world, one close friend said, but she needed to escape it just as much. After her collaboration and relationship with Woody Allen ended, Diane's personal life remained under constant scrutiny. Her romance with Warren Beatty during the filming of Reds became the talk of Hollywood. Beatty, known for his larger-than-life persona, was fascinated by her unpredictability. Their chemistry was undeniable on screen, but off-screen their relationship was intense and emotionally draining. Diane later admitted that she often felt overshadowed by his ambition. "Warren was magnetic," she said, "but he needed a mirror, not a partner." Not long after, she found herself drawn to Al Pacino, her co-star in the Godfather trilogy. Their connection was fiery yet fragile. Diane adored Pacino's brilliance but struggled with his distance. "He was the love of my life," she once said, "but he wasn't ready for what I wanted. And maybe I wasn't either." When their relationship ended, it left a mark that Diane carried for decades. Though she moved forward, she never truly let go of the quiet ache that came with loving men who could not stay. By the 1980s, Keaton had cemented her place as a serious actress. She was nominated for multiple Academy Awards and earned the respect of her peers. But with success came an invisible cost: isolation. While others built families, Diane spent long nights alone in her home, reflecting on the choices that had shaped her. She once said, "I loved my independence, but sometimes it was a lonely kind of freedom." Her independence, however, became her greatest strength. She embraced her quirks, refusing to conform to Hollywood's standards of femininity. When asked why she never married, she famously replied, "I'd rather be alone for the right reasons than with someone for the wrong ones." That honesty, that unapologetic truth, made her a role model for women everywhere. As the 1990s rolled in, Diane reinvented herself yet again. She began directing films, writing memoirs, and pursuing photography. She channeled her love for architecture into restoring old homes, turning broken, forgotten spaces into works of art. To her, the process was symbolic, a reflection of how she rebuilt herself after each heartbreak. Even as she aged, Diane never lost her spark. Her comeback role in Something's Gotta Give opposite Jack Nicholson became a defining moment in her later career. Audiences adored seeing a mature woman portrayed as desirable, confident, and funny, a rarity in Hollywood. The film not only earned her another Oscar nomination, but also reignited her reputation as a timeless leading lady. Yet despite the laughter and success, Diane's private journals revealed a woman deeply introspective about life and mortality. She often wrote about her mother, who suffered from Alzheimer's, and how she feared inheriting the same fate. "I'm terrified of forgetting the people I love," she once wrote. "But maybe that's why I collect memories, to make sure they never leave me." In those words lay the truth of Diane Keaton's story, that beneath the glamour was a soul constantly searching for meaning. She had fame, wealth, and adoration, but what she longed for most was something no award could ever give her: peace. As the cameras stopped flashing and the world's attention turned to newer faces, Diane Keaton found herself entering a new chapter of life, one she embraced not with sadness, but with quiet gratitude. She often said that aging was not something to fear, but something to celebrate. "Every wrinkle," she once joked, "is proof that I laughed at least once." While many of her peers chased youth through surgery and illusion, Diane became a symbol of authenticity, proudly accepting the passage of time. By her 60s, she had already lived several lifetimes, as a daughter, a lover, an actress, and now, most importantly, a mother. Adopting her daughter Dexter and son Duke changed her perspective on everything. For the first time, her life revolved around something far more personal than the applause of strangers. Diane once said, "My kids saved me from myself." She delighted in simple routines: school runs, family dinners, and quiet nights watching old movies at home. To her, motherhood wasn't a role she played, it was the truest version of who she was. Away from the spotlight, Diane's interests flourished. She had long been fascinated with architecture, photography, and preservation. Her Beverly Hills home was more like a time capsule, filled with vintage treasures, framed black and white photos, and handwritten letters from decades past. Friends described her house as a reflection of her soul, messy, magical, and full of history. She often spent hours restoring old furniture or photographing the California sunsets, capturing beauty in moments most people overlooked. But even in her peace, there were shadows. Diane's mother had suffered from Alzheimer's, and as Diane grew older, she became increasingly aware of her own vulnerability. In interviews, she admitted she was afraid, not of dying, but of forgetting. "To lose your memories," she said softly, "is to lose yourself." That fear pushed her to write memoirs, compile photo albums, and document every piece of her life. Each book she published was a love letter to her past, a way of preserving not just her story, but her mother's spirit as well. Despite her introspection, Diane never lost her humor. She continued to make appearances in films and talk shows, always dressed in her signature turtlenecks and oversized hats. Her self-deprecating wit made her interviews legendary. When asked if she'd ever marry, she laughed and said, "At this point, I'd need someone who can also use a walker." That mix of honesty and comedy endeared her even more to fans who saw her not just as a celebrity, but as a friend. Those close to her said that Diane's later years were among her happiest. She no longer needed Hollywood's validation. She had built a world entirely her own. Every morning, she took long walks around her neighborhood, often stopping to chat with strangers or photograph old houses. She found joy in solitude, a kind of serenity she had spent a lifetime chasing. Her children described her as a loving, protective mother who never lost her sense of wonder. She would dance around the kitchen, sing old songs from the 1970s, and talk about her days filming with legends. "Mom never saw herself as a star," Dexter once said. "She saw herself as a storyteller." In those final quiet years, Diane rarely attended red carpet events. Instead, she spent her time surrounded by family, art, and nature. She had lived the kind of life most only dream of, one filled with creativity, love, and laughter. But she carried it all with humility. "Fame fades," she once said, "but love doesn't." And when her health began to decline, she did not fight it with fear. She accepted it as the natural rhythm of life, a final act in a story she had written entirely on her own terms. For Diane Keaton, peace wasn't found in awards or applause. It was found in the quiet, in the laughter of her children, the smell of old books, and the memory of a life well lived. She had finally found what she had been searching for all along, herself. Even after his passing, Dean Martin's legacy continues to resonate with audiences around the world. Proof that true charm, talent, and authenticity never go out of style. Decades after his final curtain call, people still turn to his music and films to relive an era when elegance met humor and coolness came with effortless grace. Martin's unique ability to make people feel at ease, whether through a song or a joke, remains unmatched. Unlike many performers who carefully crafted public personas, Dean was exactly who he appeared to be: relaxed, funny, and endlessly captivating. He didn't chase fame, yet fame chased him. He didn't need to be loud to command attention. He simply walked into a room, smiled, and the world listened. His music continues to live on, from That's Amore to Ain't That a Kick in the Head. These timeless tunes have appeared in countless films, commercials, and television shows, keeping his voice alive for new generations to discover. On streaming platforms, young listeners stumble across his velvety tone and are transported to a world where romance was smooth and love was sung with sincerity. But Martin's influence extends beyond the microphone. His easygoing, humorous style inspired countless entertainers who followed, from Frank Sinatra's swagger to modern-day crooners like Michael Bublé. Even comedians admired his delivery, that perfectly timed, subtle humor that never felt forced. In an industry often marked by intensity and ego, Dean's calm confidence became a blueprint for cool. Behind the glamour, however, Dean's personal life remained quietly tragic. The loss of his son, Dean Paul Martin, in a 1987 plane crash, broke him in ways few could understand. Friends said he was never the same afterward. The laughter faded, the energy dimmed. Though he continued performing, it was clear his heart wasn't in it anymore. The man who once made millions smile could no longer find joy in his own world. Dean passed away peacefully on Christmas Day, 1995. Hollywood dimmed its lights, and tributes poured in from across the world. His Rat Pack brothers, his fans, and the younger stars he had inspired all mourned the loss of a true original. Frank Sinatra called him one of the sweetest, most talented men I ever knew, while Sammy Davis Jr. had once said, "Dean was the glue that held us together." Even today, documentaries, tribute albums, and biopics keep his spirit alive. On social media, clips of his old roasts and live performances rack up millions of views. Proof that charisma like his never fades. There's something undeniably comforting about watching Dean Martin. His effortless smile, his gentle humor, his old-school manners in a world that often forgets them. Dean Martin wasn't just a singer, comedian, or actor. He was a symbol of timeless class. He taught the world that you didn't need to shout to be heard or push to be loved. You could simply be yourself, and if you did it with sincerity, the world would remember you forever. In a time when fame is fleeting and authenticity is rare, Dean's life serves as a reminder of what true stardom looks like. He didn't just perform, he made people feel. And that's something no algorithm, trend, or fame machine can ever replace. As the curtain closes on his story, one thing remains certain. Dean Martin's laughter still echoes, his music still warms hearts, and his charm continues to inspire. The king of cool may have left the stage, but his spirit remains, eternal, effortless, and unforgettable.